For millions of fans around the world, Bill Goldberg was never just a wrestler. He was a moment. When his music hit, conversation stopped. People stood up instinctively, knowing the match wouldn't be long, but it would be unforgettable. Goldberg didn't need promos, theatrics, or complex storylines. His presence alone was enough. He walked like a man carrying violence in his bones, and the ring felt smaller the moment he stepped into it. Goldberg's rise wasn't gradual. It was explosive. WCW didn't slowly build him into a star. They unleashed him. Match after match, opponent after opponent, he tore through the roster with a simplicity that felt authentic. No wasted movement. No mercy. Just power. The undefeated streak began almost quietly, then grew into something unstoppable. 30-0, 60-0, 100-0. Each victory added another layer to the myth, but also another chain around the man behind it. Because while the audience sought dominance, Goldberg was learning on the job. He didn't have decades of ring psychology or technical refinement to fall back on. His style was pure intensity, built on explosive force and real physical punishment. Every spear rattled his spine. Every jackhammer compressed joints that would never fully recover. Concussions became part of the routine. Pain was ignored, minimized, normalized. The character couldn't slow down, so neither could he. Goldberg wasn't allowed to be human. He was booked as a weapon, and weapons are not meant to last. Behind the scenes, the pressure was suffocating. The streak wasn't just a storyline anymore. It was an obligation. Fans expected destruction. Executives demanded consistency. There was no room for experimentation, failure, or vulnerability. If Goldberg lost, the illusion shattered. So he kept going, even as his body quietly absorbed damage that would follow him for life. Then, almost overnight, everything collapsed. When WCW folded, Goldberg didn't just lose a company. He lost the entire structure that defined him. His career had been designed within one system, one vision, one protective bubble. Without it, he was suddenly exposed, injured, angry, directionless. The myth survived, but the man didn't know where he fit anymore. His move to WWE should have been redemption. Instead, it became disillusionment. The environment was colder, more political, less forgiving. Goldberg was no longer the protected centerpiece. He was an outsider walking into a locker room that didn't ask for him. Injuries followed him relentlessly. Creative frustrations piled up. Matches didn't feel the same. And slowly, the unstoppable image began to crack in front of an audience that had never been taught how to see Goldberg as anything but invincible. That disconnect broke something inside him. Goldberg has admitted that his first WWE run left him emotionally drained and mentally bitter. Not because he failed, but because he felt stripped of control over his own legacy. The story that once elevated him now felt like it was being written without his consent. And when he finally walked away, it wasn't with closure. It was with exhaustion. Retirement didn't bring peace. It brought silence. Without wrestling, Goldberg struggled to define himself. When your entire identity is built on physical dominance and intimidation, aging isn't just a biological process. It's a psychological crisis. The crowd was gone. The tunnel walks disappeared. The validation stopped. And in its place was anger, frustration, and a haunting sense of incompleteness. Years passed. Wrestling evolved. New stars emerged. Goldberg became a legend frozen in highlights, replayed endlessly but never truly understood. Fans remember the power, not the cost. The explosions, not the aftermath. And deep down, Goldberg felt unfinished. That feeling never left him. It waited. It grew quieter but heavier. Because when a man is built to be unstoppable, stopping feels like failure, even when it's survival. At 59, the tragedy of Bill Goldberg isn't about titles or records. It's about a career that burned too bright, too fast, and never slowed down enough to protect the man inside the myth. He gave wrestling everything it demanded, and more. And this is only the beginning of the story. The problem was that walking away never healed the damage. The injuries didn't disappear when the cameras stopped rolling. Goldberg woke up every morning with pain that reminded him exactly what his body had endured. His shoulders never felt stable. His back tightened without warning. Simple movements carried consequences. And mentally, the anger lingered, not at wrestling itself, but at how quickly everything had been taken out of his hands. For years, Goldberg told himself he was done. He focused on family, tried to live a quieter life, tried to convince himself that the past was enough. But legends don't retire the way normal people do. The past doesn't stay in the past when millions of fans keep replaying it for you. Every highlight clip, every chant, every question about one more match reopens something he never got to close properly. That unresolved feeling followed him everywhere. So when the opportunity to return finally came, it wasn't about ego. It was about control. Goldberg wanted to rewrite the ending he never had. He wanted to stand in the ring on his own terms, to feel the energy again without being swallowed by it. Most of all, he wanted his son to see him not as a myth on a screen, but as a man standing tall in front of the world. That motivation was deeply human and deeply tragic, because the business he returned to was not the one he left behind. Wrestling had changed. Audiences were harsher. Online criticism was relentless. Younger fans questioned his relevance. Younger wrestlers questioned his spot. Every appearance came with debate, resentment, and scrutiny. And once again, Goldberg became a lightning rod, not for dominance, but for controversy. Physically, the risk was enormous. At an age when most athletes are managing long-term health, Goldberg was putting himself back into violent situations. His body no longer healed the way it once did. Every match carried the possibility of permanent damage. And yet, he kept stepping through the curtain because unfinished stories are heavier than fear. But even as the cheers returned, the cost was visible. Goldberg has spoken openly about the pressure of knowing his body was failing him while expectations remained frozen in the past. Fans didn't want realism. They wanted the myth. They wanted the same speed, the same power, the same invincibility. And every time he couldn't fully deliver it, the criticism cut deeper than any injury ever had. That is the cruel paradox of legacy. You are loved for what you once were, but judged for no longer being able to stay there. At 59, Bill Goldberg lives with a complicated truth. He is grateful for wrestling, yet scarred by it, proud of his legacy, yet haunted by how little control he had over its most important moments. He achieved superstardom faster than almost anyone in history, but paid for it with a body that will never fully recover and a mind that had to learn how to exist without constant warfare. The real tragedy isn't that Goldberg aged. Everyone does. The tragedy is that he was never allowed to evolve naturally. He was created as an unstoppable force, consumed as a spectacle, and left to pick up the pieces when the business moved on. He didn't fail wrestling. Wrestling simply asked for everything he had, and then asked for more. And when the lights finally go out for good, Bill Goldberg's story won't be remembered just for the spear or the streak. It will be remembered as a warning about what happens when greatness is rushed, when humanity is ignored, and when a man is turned into a myth before he's allowed to become himself. What makes Goldberg's story especially painful is that there was never a clean ending. No perfect final match. No universally accepted farewell. Just a slow realization that the body he once trusted had become something he had to negotiate with every day. Pain wasn't a temporary setback anymore. It was permanent. And with that permanence came a hard truth most legends struggle to accept. Willpower can't outwork time. Goldberg has spoken about how difficult it was to watch wrestling from the outside, knowing that the industry had moved forward without him while still refusing to let him go. He was constantly referenced, compared, debated. His name never left the conversation, but his place in it was never stable. To some, he was an icon. To others, a reminder of an era they wanted to critique or outgrow. That constant tug of war kept him emotionally tethered to a world he couldn't fully re-enter without consequences. And yet, walking away completely felt impossible. There's a loneliness that comes with being built as the guy. Not a technician, not a storyteller, not a locker room general, just the destroyer. When that role disappears, there is no obvious next chapter. Goldberg wasn't trained to fade into the background or reinvent himself quietly. His entire career taught him that value came from impact, not longevity. So he kept carrying the weight of expectation, his own and everyone else's. Behind the scenes, Goldberg became far more introspective than fans ever imagined. He questioned whether the streak had been a blessing or a curse, whether being protected so heavily had robbed him of growth, whether slowing down earlier might have saved his body, even if it meant losing the myth. These are questions with no satisfying answers, only acceptance. And acceptance, for someone like Goldberg, is the hardest fight of all. What ultimately softens the tragedy is his honesty. Unlike many legends who cling to denial, Goldberg has acknowledged the cost. He has admitted fear, regret, and vulnerability, things his on-screen persona was never allowed to show. He understands now that invincibility was never real, only profitable. And that realization, while painful, is also freeing. At 59, he is no longer chasing validation from crowds or critics. He is trying to live with the consequences of a life lived at full collision speed. He is trying to be present as a father, a husband, and a man who survived a career that could have taken far more than it already did. The tragedy of Bill Goldberg isn't that he couldn't stay on top forever. No one can. The tragedy is that he was never given the chance to come down gently. He was launched like a rocket and expected to burn indefinitely, with no plan for what happened when the fuel ran out. In the end, Goldberg's story isn't just about wrestling. It's about what happens when a person is reduced to a symbol, when strength becomes identity, and when stopping feels like losing yourself. His legacy will always include dominance and destruction, but beneath that will always be a quieter truth. Even the strongest men eventually have to learn how to let go. Despite everything, Goldberg's journey is far from over. Unlike many who fade into obscurity after stepping away from the spotlight, Goldberg remains active, perhaps not in the ring, but in the conversations about him. His voice has become one of reflection and wisdom, shaped by years of wrestling with his own identity and the legacy he's trying to leave behind. There's something remarkably human about watching a man who was once a living, breathing myth, now embracing the realities of aging, injury, and life beyond the ring. What Goldberg offers now, perhaps more than ever, is a glimpse into the psyche of someone who achieved it all, but is still learning how to navigate the aftermath. In interviews, he speaks openly about the mental toll the business took on him, about the self-doubt that crept in during his later years, the moments of feeling discarded or irrelevant, and the challenge of having to rebuild an identity that was once so closely tied to his wrestling persona. It's a far cry from the brash confidence he once exuded. But what makes Goldberg's story truly resonate is the honesty in his struggle. Rather than trying to reinvent himself as someone else or simply chasing the next high of adulation, Goldberg is focusing on healing, both physically and mentally. The man who once thought of himself as invincible is learning how to listen to his body, how to navigate pain, and how to live a life that isn't entirely defined by the number of championships or victories he's won. There's a quiet strength in that, an authenticity that speaks to the human side of someone who has been larger than life for so long. Goldberg has also become more vocal about his role as a father. For years, his son watched his father become a global icon, but Goldberg wanted his son to see him for who he really is. Not the larger-than-life figure, but the man who had to fight for everything, and sometimes the man who fell. As Goldberg has said in interviews, the most important part of his legacy isn't the matches or the titles. It's the lessons he passes down to his child. It's the honesty, the work ethic, and the resilience that he hopes will resonate more than the roar of the crowd ever did. Perhaps the most inspiring aspect of Goldberg's later years is how he's come to terms with the fact that greatness doesn't come from a singular moment. It comes from embracing the full spectrum of experiences. He's no longer chasing the approval of fans or the validation that once defined his career. Instead, he's finding peace in his own truth. His return to WWE for the occasional match wasn't about reclaiming glory or silencing critics. It was about redemption on his terms. A final chapter that allowed him to reconcile with his past and to give his son the chance to see the father who was a champion in every way, not just in the ring. Every appearance, every match, every moment since his return has been less about reliving the past and more about finding closure in a story that's never truly finished. At 59, Bill Goldberg's legacy is no longer just about the undefeated streak, the brutal matches, or the spears that made fans lose their breath. It's about the man who is still here, still learning, still growing, and still fighting. Not just for championships, but for peace of mind and a life beyond wrestling's unrelenting grip. He may not have been able to control every aspect of his journey, but today, he controls his story. And in the end, that's the real victory. As Goldberg steps further into his later years, his transformation from the unstoppable force in the ring to a man grappling with the aftermath of fame has been both heart-wrenching and inspiring. There's no denying that the physical toll of his wrestling career will forever be a part of him. Chronic pain, injuries, and the wear and tear of years spent in a brutal profession. But as he transitions into this new chapter, it's clear that the real battles he faces are no longer against opponents in the ring. They're against time, memory, and the quest for internal peace. The journey hasn't been easy. Every time Goldberg watches a match from his prime, it's impossible to escape the weight of his former identity, the one that fans still cheer for, the one that defined him for so long. But as he's aged, he's become more at peace with the idea that he doesn't have to be defined by those past glories. Goldberg's story is not just a cautionary tale about the price of fame. It's a story of reinvention. It's a tale of finding value in things beyond the wrestling ring, and in accepting that life has more to offer than what once defined him as a global superstar. Goldberg's relationship with his fans has also evolved. In the past, he would have fed off their energy, using their adoration as fuel to power his performances. Now, his connection with them is much more personal and reflective. He understands that his impact goes beyond the ring. It's in the lessons learned, the inspiration shared, and the raw, unfiltered honesty he now offers to those who still remember the man who once seemed untouchable. His social media posts, his interviews, and his public appearances are no longer about the character fans grew up with. They're about the man behind the myth. The one who's dealt with personal struggles, loss, and the constant push to redefine himself as his body and mind age. The Goldberg who once only had a destruction mindset now focuses on restoration of his body, his spirit, and his relationships. In recent years, Goldberg has also become more involved in charity work and giving back to the community. Wrestling may have been the vehicle that brought him worldwide recognition, but it's through his philanthropic efforts that he's found new purpose. Whether it's through working with veterans, engaging in initiatives to support children's causes, or encouraging people to face their challenges head-on, Goldberg has embraced the idea that there's more to life than titles and accolades. He has said that as he's gotten older, he's realized the importance of leaving a legacy that goes beyond his wrestling career. The real tragedy, and ultimately the most beautiful part of Goldberg's story, is the journey of finding peace and understanding in the aftermath of greatness. At 59, Bill Goldberg isn't just a man who once dominated a wrestling ring. He's a man who has faced the emotional and physical aftermath of being a living legend, a man who is learning to find meaning in what comes after the spotlight fades. Now, Goldberg doesn't need the adoration of the crowd to validate his worth. He's found a more personal peace, knowing that his story isn't just about the battles he won in the ring, but about the internal wars he's fought since stepping away from it. It's about learning to live with the consequences of fame, to accept the toll it takes, and to make peace with the man he's become. Bill Goldberg's legacy is complex. It's a story of strength, pain, resilience, and ultimately redemption. His greatest victory may not have been in his undefeated streak, but in his ability to keep going despite everything. His true triumph lies in his willingness to embrace his humanity, flaws and all, and to share that story with the world. The Bill Goldberg fans once idolized is no longer the man who steps into the ring, but the man who's found peace, and in doing so, discovered a new strength. His journey isn't just about wrestling. It's about the incredible resilience of the human spirit. As Goldberg continues his journey beyond the wrestling ring, it's evident that the man who once stood as the epitome of invincibility has now become a symbol of vulnerability and strength in its most authentic form. He's no longer defined by the explosive moments of his youth, but by the wisdom he's gained through years of reflection, healing, and reinvention. The road to this transformation hasn't been easy, and it's a path that few could truly understand unless they've walked in Goldberg's boots. In wrestling, the audience sees the grand spectacle, the triumphs, the losses, the physicality. But what they don't see are the years of pain and recovery, the mental battles fought in silence, and the inner conflicts of living up to an image that was never meant to last forever. Goldberg has made peace with the fact that his body can no longer do what it once did. He can no longer step into the ring with the same intensity, the same fire, and the same reckless abandon. But what he has gained in this new phase of life is something far more profound, a deeper understanding of what it means to truly live beyond the spectacle and the accolades. He now recognizes that true strength isn't measured by the number of victories you can claim, but by the resilience it takes to live with your scars, learn from them, and continue forward. As he reflects on his career, Goldberg has also come to understand that the fight isn't just against opponents in the ring, it's against time itself. The brutal reality of aging and the toll it takes on the body is something no wrestler, no athlete can ever escape. And yet, Goldberg has embraced this inevitability with a sense of grace and acceptance that wasn't there during his heyday. Instead of running from it, he's using it as a tool for self-growth, realizing that his value is not determined by his past performances, but by the man he is now, and by the lessons he can pass on to others. In his later years, Goldberg has been vocal about mental health, something that's often overlooked in the world of professional wrestling. The mental and emotional toll of a career that demands so much can be devastating, and he's not shying away from addressing it. He's been an advocate for athletes and individuals in general to take care of their minds as well as their bodies, acknowledging that true healing doesn't just come from physical recovery, but also from confronting your emotions and finding peace within yourself. One of Goldberg's most impactful roles now is that of father. He often shares how much he wants his son to see him as more than just the wrestling icon. He wants to be remembered for the values he instilled, the lessons he taught, and the love he gave, not just for the matches or the victories. As a father, he knows that his true legacy will live on in the way he raised his child, the person his son becomes because of the foundation Goldberg helped build. He's working to be a father who's present, emotionally available, and someone his son can be proud of, far beyond the accolades of his past. What truly elevates Goldberg's legacy now is his journey of self-awareness. He's found redemption not in chasing the next big win, but in accepting that the greatest battles are the ones we fight within ourselves. His story serves as a reminder to all of us that our worth is not based on our achievements alone, but on our ability to face life's challenges with authenticity, humility, and resilience. In the end, Bill Goldberg's most enduring legacy may not be the undefeated streak or the fearsome persona that once electrified arenas. His greatest victory is the journey he's taken to embrace his humanity, to find peace within himself, and to continue growing long after his days as a wrestler have ended. His story is a testament to the enduring power of reinvention, the strength it takes to admit vulnerability, and the importance of finding meaning beyond fame. Through it all, Goldberg has shown that true greatness isn't about staying invincible. It's about learning how to fall, get back up, and keep moving forward with courage and grace. Bill Goldberg may no longer be the indestructible force he once was in the ring, but he's now the embodiment of something even more powerful, the strength to evolve, the courage to face his scars, and the wisdom to share his story with others in a way that only someone who's truly lived can. His journey is a reminder that no matter where life takes us, we can always find the strength to redefine ourselves, even when the world thinks it's all over. And that, in itself, is a victory worth celebrating. As Goldberg moves forward, one of the most poignant aspects of his journey is the legacy he is building, not from the ring, but through the way he lives his life now. While his wrestling career will always be a significant chapter in his story, the pages that follow tell a story of personal growth, emotional resilience, and finding a sense of peace that once seemed impossible. His journey shows us that true strength lies not in never falling, but in how we rise and adapt when life's inevitable challenges come our way. Goldberg has often reflected on how fame can distort a person's sense of self. When you're constantly praised for being larger than life, it can be difficult to differentiate who you are from the persona others have created for you. For a long time, Goldberg was defined by his invincibility, both in the ring and in the public eye. The world saw him as a dominant force, but he came to realize that the real battle was learning to live without the mask of perfection. Now, as he takes on the role of mentor and motivator, Goldberg encourages others, particularly younger athletes and fans, not to make the same mistakes he did. He speaks candidly about the mental and physical toll of his career, sharing his experiences to help others better understand the sacrifices that come with chasing fame and success. In doing so, Goldberg has become a voice of reason for those who might feel pressure to constantly be on or to live up to an unattainable ideal. Perhaps the most profound part of Goldberg's transformation is his ability to see himself through a new lens. Once defined by his strength and the power of his character, Goldberg now measures himself by different standards. His legacy isn't just about the physical feats he accomplished or the championships he won. It's about the lessons he's learned, the wisdom he's gained, and the relationships he's nurtured along the way. This change in perspective also extends to how he now interacts with the world. Goldberg no longer feels the need to prove himself to anyone. He's at peace with the fact that his greatest contributions to the wrestling world have already been made. Now, his focus is on creating a life that's fulfilling on his own terms. Whether it's spending quality time with his family, engaging in meaningful charity work, or using his platform to speak out on important issues, Goldberg has embraced a new purpose that goes beyond the ring. His involvement in charity and advocacy work reflects a deeper understanding of his role in the world. Goldberg has become an advocate for mental health awareness and supporting causes that give back to the community. He knows that the spotlight he once held can be used for something greater than just personal fame. It can be a tool for making a difference in the lives of others. As he continues to navigate life after wrestling, Goldberg is also realizing that his story isn't over. It's still being written. It's not a story of loss or regret, but one of renewal. Even with the physical limitations that come with age and the toll of his wrestling career, Goldberg is finding new ways to live with purpose. He's still carving out a space for himself in the world, not as the mythical Goldberg that fans remember, but as the man who has weathered life's storms and emerged stronger for it. Goldberg's journey has shown that real strength lies in the courage to accept change, to face the unknown, and to embrace who you are, flaws and all. There's a quiet bravery in choosing to redefine yourself, in choosing to not be defined by past achievements or public expectations. And through it all, Goldberg has remained unapologetically himself, offering a story that's not just for wrestling fans, but for anyone who's ever wondered what comes after the applause fades. In the end, Goldberg's legacy will endure, not because of the undefeated streaks or the moments of glory in the ring, but because of the man who overcame immense obstacles, learned from them, and used that wisdom to impact the world around him. His story is a testament to the power of growth, reinvention, and the idea that it's never too late to find a new purpose in life. Bill Goldberg has shown us that we don't have to be defined by what we were, but by who we choose to become. And in doing so, he has rewritten the definition of strength itself, not as invincibility, but as resilience, adaptability, and the courage to live authentically.